Started to get on three, two, one. Hey, everybody, and welcome to The Spiritual Activist. It's great to have you. We've got an extraordinary panel today, amazing group of guests. Jeffrey Platts will be joining us today. How are you today, Jeffrey?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. We've got Andrea DiLorenzo on the line. Hello, Andrea.
Hello.
David Pagan.
Hey.
Hey, that's it.
I'm very happy.
Rahul Bhambhani, how are you today, brother?
I'm wonderful.
Great. Well, it's wonderful to have you. So I just want to start the show by speaking with Jeffrey a little bit about what it is that you do. You're a men's coach. You're a speaker. You're an author. You're an overall amazing guy, and you're a spiritual activist. Tell us a little bit about your journey. What has brought you to where you are today, and kind of share with us what you do for a living.
Yeah. Thanks, man. First, Jack, thanks again for having me. This is sounds like it's gonna be a fun call. I watched a couple of the other episodes, and they all seem like fun, so I'm excited for today. Yeah, I've been a coach now for about like 4 years now. Coach and facilitator. I do workshops and live events around the country, and basically here in DC. I'm based here in DC, and my journey, I guess, started. I don't know. Growing up, I guess we'll go back way back when. Starting when I was a kid, I was like basically really like quiet. Like I had like no friends. I really spent a lot of time by myself, and I got a lot of limiting beliefs around myself. You know, like I'm not good enough, or I'm not cool enough, or what do I need to do to fit in? And like the message that came up as I reflected years later was the message that I don't belong. You know, like I don't belong. And I remember distinctly an image of myself when I was in sixth grade or fifth or sixth grade, and I grew up in Connecticut, and we had, in the spring there was weather, it was 70 degrees. When it became winter to spring, it was 70 degrees, and I remember myself, the visual of me getting up in the morning and deciding whether I needed to wear shorts or pants. Basically, what were the kids going to be wearing that day? Was everybody wearing shorts or mostly pants? And I wanted to wear what most of the kids would wear, so I would fit in. I mean, it's such a small little thing, but I recognized that years later as wow, that was me wanting to fit in and figuring out what do I need to do to fit in. And then I just started my journey in terms of personal growth and introspection and all that started when I picked up a copy of Anthony Robbins's book, Awaken the Giant Within. This was summer of junior year to senior year in high school, and that was my first realization that people can change, that you're not stuck the way you are forever. And that was kind of the first step for me. My parents just had it lying on the table, and I picked it up and just started that journey of reading and studying myself. And it evolved into Eckhart Tolle and Conversations with God and Wayne Dyer, and so it went into success, for several years, reading and studying about success and psychology, self-help, and then more spirituality, Abraham Hicks and Eckhart Tolle and all that stuff. And then over the past, I think 5 or 6 years, it's been mostly around, well, not mostly, but a big part of it has been around sexuality and communication, masculine, feminine, interactions, dating. I got involved in about 10 years ago in the pickup artist movement, right? Doing workshops or taking workshops and learning how to meet chicks and how to go out to bars and get a woman interested in you. So a lot of the stuff that I share now with clients and workshops is me just sharing my own insights and my own experiences and that I've learned along the way, as well as what I'm currently learning. I don't brand myself as a guru or an expert. I'm out there living and learning and getting triggered and learning and all these things just as much as anybody else. I'm not above everybody dispelling wisdom down. I'm on the playing field with everybody else, and I'm just sharing it with everybody. So, but yeah, so now I about 4 years ago I started just writing on my website and just started coaching and started getting just exposure to what this is like to share this with the world. I've been studying it for 15, 16 years at that point, and I wanted to just, hey, I have something to say. I have things that I want to share that I think can help people. And then a lot of it just came from my own pain and suffering and my insights from that. And so far, it's been an amazing journey, and I'm just excited for what's going to happen next. But yeah, so that's kind of like in a nutshell. Hopefully that gives a little bit of it.
That's awesome, and it very much mirrors pretty much everybody who's on this call right now when it comes to not branding ourselves as experts, but having this journey and having studied these things for so long that it's almost a moral obligation to get them out of your head and into the streets. I mean, that's kind of what I'm feeling with folks coming on the show and pretty much our whole panel.
Yeah, yeah, and like for me, it's I still struggle with it sometimes. Is the idea that like the thought that who am I to share this? Other people are saying similar things, or sometimes even the same things. And then I realize I've gotten many reminders from the universe that my particular voice, like the fact that it's coming from me and my persona and my language and my style, is what resonates with some people and what doesn't resonate with others. Just like I resonate with certain people and musicians and artists and authors and speakers, and some not. So it's like owning that part, like, hey, it's me. It's me. It's not just the information, but it's also me that is being, that is resonating with people. So that's kind of like really been a powerful insight for me.
That's awesome. What about you guys? Any thoughts on that kind of philosophy?
Yeah, I never know when to put shorts on.
Tough decision. It's a hard decision.
I live in Orlando, man. You never know. I mean, I faced that same dilemma like in January. Do I wear shorts?
Morning. Yeah. So I have a question for you.
Something that I know that I'd struggle with, especially when we started Kick-Ass Dad. I was blown away when people actually responded. Like the first listener email that we got, the first thought in my mind was, who am I to have even received this? I almost felt like I was invading, like I was in someone's house that I shouldn't have been in because it opened up like that. That's how I felt. And then and I know Mike and I have this conversation often, we have to remind ourselves that we are what they're identifying with. Even though, like you said, Jeff, you might have been saying the same thing, but it wasn't received the same way because maybe they couldn't relate to or they didn't see themselves in that person. But when it came from you, it finally clicked,
Yeah.
So,
and the challenge for me has been like deciphering that, like separating the ego from that, like, oh, look at me, like I'm, it was me that made them, get the message, it's like really no, it's like I'm being, whatever needs to come through, I'm the channeler for the wisdom and the insights that are coming out, and it's not like it's really been it's challenging sometimes, right? Like look at me, like I'm the one, like I'm the center of this information vortex, that's sharing. So that's been challenging for me, but I can get that too. I felt that way too.
Yeah, that's powerful. What was your question, Rahul? Rahul. I think he's frozen.
He's meditating. He's meditating.
Yeah.
So I can very much relate to that, Jeff, and that was something I never felt like I fit in as a kid. And I almost wonder if it's this kind of like we're in this world that just is weird, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense sometimes, and everybody's it's like dog eat dog out there, and I never felt comfortable in that environment, and I really had to I really separated myself and kind of went introvert there for a while, and then I was on a similar journey as you, almost the exact same books that you read. That was my journey as well. Yeah. And like this move from personal development and personal growth to spirituality to a greater understanding of the people that are here now. So it's just been extraordinary for me, and so I'd highly resonate with what you're saying. Rahul, are you done meditating?
Yes, I had to take a little break for a sec. Little aside, but now I'm back, and I have a great question for you, I think. So, this, I don't know if you guys talked about this while I was meditating, but you got, so you talked about the desire to fit in and to like be cool, right? So Dave and I were talking about this the other day, and how this whole matrix, this whole idea of what it means to fit in, to be cool, to be like, liked by society and like people in general while growing up. How did you work your way through that, and how have you seen that impact your ability to show up as a spiritual activist in your own right. Now.
This is for me? You're asking me?
Yeah, for you. Yeah.
No, just checking. Yeah, I think for me, the coolness that I realize the people that are cool don't think that they're cool. You know, they just happen to like themselves and accept themselves. You know, like they're not thinking, oh, look how cool. If you think you're cool, then you're probably not cool. You know, like you're just put on. You know? So it's like, for me, it was more like, I'm sharing what I'm sharing. I am who I am. I'm going to say what I want to say. And then knowing that I have my own back, you know, knowing that I'm going to accept myself no matter what happens, no matter how people respond, has been like a big lesson for me in that. And yeah, like, you know, with Facebook and social media, it is about presentation and about image and about like portraying yourself in a certain light. I mean, it's hard to get away from that, you know, even just having your own website or just walking down the street. You put on certain clothes because you want to look a certain way and portray yourself in a certain way. But I think it's like the energy that it's coming from, you know, like, am I trying to impress? Am I trying to, Brian Bayer, one of my teachers, and he says that, like, the distinction between impress versus express, you know, like, are you trying to impress versus express? You know, so it's more about expression, I think, than it is about impressing, you know, trying to impress somebody. And so for me, that's been kind of like my journey, you know, even, and then catching myself when I am trying to, like, did I just write that status up there just to kind of look a certain way, or am I just, you know, just share, am I sharing it just to share it, you know, or did I, you know, it's like, that's kind of more of the journey. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, it also leads me to another or question that plays on that is, like, so what is your commitment to then in what it is that you're creating and showing up as in the world? Like, what would you say you're committed to?
Yeah. For me, I'm committed to, I guess, it's authenticity is a big word for me. You know, being really just myself and encouraging others to be themselves. And that's part of a lot of the events that I do, the Relating Game Nights and the circling and the workshops and the coaching, is like creating a space for that to happen. You know, to make it welcome, for people to feel that they belong. You know, that who they are as they are. Nothing needs to change for them to belong. They already belong. It's just a matter of them realizing that truth. You know.
Right.
It's kind of full circle there, you know, from us all as children trying to fit in and then doing this self-work and this self-love so that now we have our own backs, as you say, and to be able to fit in, to feel like we fit in our own skin. I think once you can feel that fitting in your own skin, you can fit in anywhere. You light up the room. I mean, it's a matter of that. I love that idea of expression versus impressing. You know, it reminds me of something that one of my mentors talks about is, you know, be interested, not interesting. Don't try to be an interesting person. There's nothing more annoying in the world than somebody who's trying to be interesting. But when you're interested in other people, when you're genuinely interested in who they are and how they respond to things and how they're showing up in the world, that's when you really start to create the dynamic connections and relationships in life. What are your thoughts on that, Andrea?
Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm not sure that it's ever been a thing for me to try to fit in. I think for me, the biggest thing has been about being the fullest expression of myself, and as Jeffrey said, authentically. And so as I continue to express and as I continue to share, and as more people are starting to feel a resonance with my message, I actually feel an even deeper responsibility to speak and to share and to connect from the purest part of myself. And so what I'm really committed to is my own work, period, 100% all the time. You know, creating that clarity within my body, within my soul, within my mind through, you know, various practices, even just engaging in the world or even on Facebook and recognizing those parts of myself that, yeah, as Jeffrey pointed out too, are trying to get attention. And being honest with myself. It's not to be hard on myself. It's not to judge. It's none of that. It's about, noticing just internally any contractions or any part of my being that feels like it's trying to grip onto something, and becoming very sensitive to that and looking at that. And again, not to judge or to be hard on myself, but to just recognize and be honest, because as I said, I feel such a deep responsibility that, again, as more people start even, coming on these shows and are resonating with me, where I'm speaking from is what matters most. It's not so much about what I'm actually saying as much as where am I speaking from. And the pure I am in that connection from, all layers and all levels of myself, I feel, I don't know what you would call it. It's almost like there's a wider space for people to receive the love of who they are.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And have you found in your journey that it's kind of like, I mean, for me, it's been like this roller coaster ride. So you hit these highs, you hit these lows, and then you're dealing with, shit that comes up from the past, and you're constantly recognizing, and this has been the biggest challenge for me, is recognizing when I'm not acting or I'm not expressing myself from a place of honesty, when I, when I've got one of those old beliefs or one of those old things that, I grip onto, and then, to your point, Andrea, not attaching myself or not going, I can't believe you did that, or, with the negative self-talk, but just recognizing it. And I think just in that recognition, you can bring yourself back up to one of those higher energy levels. It's when we beat ourselves up and go into those shame spirals is when it becomes very self-destructive.
Yes, yes. That's something I'm learning, is it's not so much about our reaction, it's how we respond to our reaction. How we nurture ourselves in that, how we love ourselves in the reaction. That's where it gets space to just kind of unravel and dissolve, rather than, being hard on ourselves about it.
Right.
I remember something that everyone's already mentioned there, as far as what we think is cool, or what when we realized we didn't want to fit in anymore. The word that everyone so far has said is honesty, or being honest, and mostly with oneself. You said, you wanted to fit in when you were younger, so you had this whole jean or shorts debacle that bothered you. When I was growing up, I was the same way. I was a real small dude. I was always the shortest kid in my class, and more often than not, the shortest kid in the school. Regardless of what grade I was in. I had first graders that were taller than me in 5th grade. So I grew up, and I always felt that I didn't really fit in. So, but I had a really diverse background. I hung around with, my dad and his friends. So I didn't get what some of these kids were talking about half the time. But I found myself, wanting to fit in, and so in order to do that, I would lie, when they said, oh, do you like this? And I would say, yeah, because apparently 15 other kids like it, so I'm going to say that I like it too, but I wasn't being honest with myself. And I remember as I got older, seeing a really good friend of mine just say that he didn't like something in front of people that did. And I thought that was extremely brave, and I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And I thought to myself, how cool would it be if I had the balls to say what I actually thought, about something, or I didn't, I don't like what you said to that woman, or I don't like what you did to that kid over here, or whatever it is, or hey, you're being a jerk. And at that point, I realized that I was actually a coward the whole time, that I didn't have the bravery to be honest with myself. And so for all these years, I didn't even know who I really was, because I never every time myself would say something, I'd shut them up. They're like, no, you can't say that, man. No one's going to think you're cool, or that's not cool, or, you're going to get your ass beat again, or whatever it is, And when I finally owned that part of myself and started saying, I did catch a few ass whoopings, actually, because I stood up for some kids that couldn't stand up for themselves, and we're talking high school and even into college. And then as I just got older and I became a man, I kind of came into my own. You know, I was an excellent dancer, so that was something that was really, you know, fun in the 80s and in the 90s, and because of that I was really popular, you know. But I was a dork as far as I was concerned, you know. I was just good at dancing, and that was just the thing at the time, right? So that's what made that. But I found these other kids or these other people to be really cool just because they, you know, because they were different and they at least were comfortable in their skin enough to say so, you know. So then I began to look inward and say, well, what do you know, I need to spend some time with this guy, you know, with David, and listen to what he's saying, because for the longest time I was doing things that I had no idea why, doing them because other people did them, you know. And then I didn't, I mean, even up until the last, like, few years, 2-3 years, like, really getting to know myself, like spending time alone, being a complete idiot, dancing and singing, just doing dumb things. I don't know. And it wasn't until then, like, Rahul and I had the conversation about what is cool. Apparently cool, you know, the standard for it was set forth years ago when James Dean put a cigarette in his mouth, you know. And that wasn't, you know, him doing that wasn't cool. What was cool was that he didn't give a damn about what other people thought of him. That's what was cool, you know. But because it was him, we then took a snapshot and, like, okay, these jeans are cool, those shoes are cool, that cigarette in his mouth is cool, his hair is cool, and blah, blah, blah. And none of that had anything to do with it, you know. So we need to, you know, show people, like, that's, you know, there's no picture of cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Can I share?
Go
Can I
ahead.
share? Go ahead, Rahul.
So something that I was chatting with one of my mentors about a while ago was this fear of judgment that is so debilitating to anybody, like pretty much everybody, especially people who are super sensitive. It's like, because I was, like, you know, doing all this work on myself, and I got to a point where I was like, oh my God, like, I'm not like, I can be me, but there's this intense fear of the feeling of judgment from another person, like that feeling in my body. And I feel like that's so debilitating and so inhibitory, if that's even a word, for people who are, like, wanting to live their truth, right? It's like, so, you know, when I became aware of that, I was like, okay, well, just the awareness of that, that's why I'm sharing it, is profound, because when we realize that that feeling is what we're actually not wanting to feel, and we actually, like, you know, move through it by loving ourselves enough to move into it, it's like, what exists on the other side of it is, like, judgment only exists within judgment. That feeling only exists. So if there's a part of you that's judging yourself, and another's judging you and reflecting that back to you, you're going to feel it. But now, like, if I'm just walking on the street and I'm like, I feel fantastic, and some dude's like, hey, fag, you're wearing a pink shirt, fuck you, and I'm like, that's cool. You're like, like, that's his, like, that's cool if you were to say that, because I'm like, I feel good, and so judgment doesn't exist in my reality because I'm in love. So it's like, okay, cool. He can say that, he can feel that, I can notice he's in that, and it doesn't affect me or affect me showing up in my truth. So I feel like
Who
that's
said that to you, Rahul? I want to know.
you're gonna go whoop his ass. His ass whooped.
Is he at the Starbucks still? Is he still there?
Still there. He's still there. That's an ass whooping of the century. That's what's up.
Yeah. So how did you? I got a question for Jeff, because this is something that's been really, you know, if you've gotten a chance to listen to any of the jam sessions that we have on Kick-Ass Dad, it's been something that Brandon and I have kind of been spearheading, at least in Orlando, you know, and then on a larger scale through our podcast, but like wanting guys to step into being a gentleman, to being a real man, you know, stop approaching women in a fashion that what you think is cool because you saw it in a video, or you know, that's what you think they want to hear. How does you coming into that on your own change that aspect of your life?
Yeah, for me, I guess, like I said, like, I was always really shy around women, and didn't know what to say or do, and so the pickup artist stuff was like a drug, right? Like, oh wow, I can dress this way and do these things and say these lines, and it will get a reaction from women, and for the most part, it did, right? But for me, the awakening came when it was around authenticity, because I really didn't feel good in doing those things. It really didn't feel like me. And nor I'm not really a big bar or club guy. I don't really like to drink that much, and I don't really like going to bars and clubs on its own. But I would go because that's what you would, going on the same theme. It was the cool thing to do. It's what people do. People go to bars and clubs on a weekend. It's a Friday night. You should not be home. You should be at a bar or a club. And so I would do that, and I would be like, yeah. And so after a while, I was like, this is dumb. This is like, why am I doing this? And so I started to kind of let go of those techniques and those mindsets, and even just the language, and pickup artist stuff. They call them sets. It's a target. Like the fact that even calling a woman a target doesn't really feel good. So she's a woman. She's a human being that you are going to talk to, not a set that you're going to approach and open up and blah blah blah. So I started to get involved more in the work of David Data and more the spirituality stuff, and it felt more meaningful to me. And then I also the biggest transformation in that regard was when I came across the Olympic Man program, and I did their course, and that really blew my mind as far as wow, I don't need to do anything special. I don't need to learn any lines. I can just show up as myself, and learning ways to be with a woman, ways to be with her and show curiosity and express myself and show vulnerability. That those are the things that actually create the connection and meaningful connections, And so getting involved with that, and then doing the training with them, and then finally, being one of the facilitators to bring the course out here to the East Coast was awesome. I can help them share that wisdom and that experience with other guys. And that's what I do still with my coaching and stuff. So for me, it was more about, and my philosophy is, I coach women too, and I've coached men, and lately it's been mostly men. And the logic behind it and the inspiration for me is that rather than coaching women, helping them attract, the seemingly fixed pool of conscious men, I'd rather create more conscious men that then are more available to the women. Does that make sense? So I'm helping women by helping the men. I can create an army, a bigger army of men that are conscious and awakened to their heart and to their balls.
And you mentioned before that it's not about the ego. It's simply about the fact that you've got this message coming through you, and so you resonate specifically with certain types of people, and so that's why your voice is so valuable. That's why it's so valid. Rahul and I had this conversation literally last week, and I was sharing with him my story, and there was so much going on in me. I'm going, why would anybody care about me? Why would anybody listen to me? Why? Yeah. These messages are already out there. If I'm going to be repeating these messages, they're already out there. If somebody could go find it in a book that I read, why does it matter that I speak? And to your point, it's about having that personal connection with those people. That's amazing.
Yeah. For me, it was a really just to this day when we show, in our workshops and stuff, where these men come and they want to learn the technique. They're like, tell me what to say, what to do, what to dress, all these things. And then we give them the experience of that it's actually not about that at all. It blows their minds, and they kind of, cool, how can I get more of this? How can I get experience in being this way? And I think it's a lot of the guys that we call, either douchebags or not really self-aware. It's mostly that they just don't know any other way to be. So I think, all of us here on this call are serving as an example is serving as an example in our day-to-day life, but then using Facebook, using social media, using whatever medium we can to share that we are that example is helpful too.
Right.
That guy's really awesome, and he's really being vulnerable, or there's the biggest challenge for me, for the longest time was this definition of masculinity. David said, there's one definition of cool. Well, for me, the biggest challenge was there's one definition of masculinity. It's the guy that's walking in, it's the frat guy that walks into a bar and is high-fiving everybody, getting everybody to laugh and all that stuff, that kind of, that's built, a certain, physical definition of masculinity. So there's when I realized, no, there's not that. And being exposed to different people has been with different kinds of men and men that I respect and admire, but they're all different flavors across the board. They're all different flavors of men, and it's really been powerful for me to experience that and just embrace my own version
of masculinity. Yeah, that's great, because so oftentimes we're boxed into this kind of pigeonhole of what a man is supposed to be, and I get shit constantly from people who are like, what's with all the pixie dust and rainbows all over your Facebook page? Like, what is that about? Mm-hmm. And I just have to kind of slowly explain it to them.
Yeah, that your wife put them up.
Right. Oh, Kristen just told you to watch it.
I know. Love you, Kristen.
You mentioned early on that you now do, like, so you work polarity work and masculinity, femininity work with people. So I already congratulated you on this, but it made me very happy to find out that you are now in a relationship, and it's cool for me because when I see that, I'm like, that's a great example of a really aligned relationship, which is why it makes me so happy. I'm like, that's just people seeing that and feeling you guys together is going to change things, right? So my question for you is, I mean, that's my feeling about it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So my question for you is, what role do you see relationships playing in men, well, not even men, say people being able to fully show up for what is their purpose in being here, like spiritual activism, like showing up fully, like that level of the conversation?
Yeah, look, for me, well, there's two parts to that. One is, yes, romantic, intimate one-to-one relationships, whether they be friendships or romantic relationships, are, like, for me, the biggest catalyst for growth, because, like, you're facing your shit, and your shit gets faced in them, so it's a really big, powerful tool for that. But it needs to be done with awareness. You have to come in with that mentality in order to kind of have it work that way. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's really powerful around relationship is the concept of community, which I think that's why Facebook is to a big portion of it is, that's why it's so popular, because it is a community. Yes, it's online. Yes, it's it's just virtual. It's it's on the screen, but it's in essence a community of some sort, right? And it allows for connections. I met my girlfriend on Facebook, so. But I think community, even locally, in person, is a huge catalyst for growth as well. A community with a conscious, spin to it, right? If you're, deliberately choosing to grow and learn from each other and support each other and hold each other to a higher standard of authenticity and connection, that's when it's thriving. Not just getting together just for an activity. There's plenty of those already. There's plenty of activity groups, softball, kickball, whatever. But a community of people that is really heart-centered and driven to get each other and really support each other is just as powerful as the romantic relationship as well. Mm. For me, especially here in DC, we created this community around authentic relating over the past several years, and it's really powerful when people people that are new that tap into it, they just want to be a part of it because they realize that there's a different energy, there's different commitment to the people in the community.
I love your perspective on relationships too, and how it's one of the most powerful vehicles to really have people face their own shit. Because it's like, as long as you got shit in your head, it's going to come up in that relationship. And so many people blame and spend time pointing fingers and keeping score. And we talked about this on our an earlier show today, on our Full Circle episode, is that people are in such this need to keep score. Well, you should have the baby 50% of the time, and I should have the baby 50% of the time, or you should do the dishes 50% of the time, and I should do the dishes. And we're stuck in this mentality of keeping score of what we're doing, as opposed to really supporting and collaborating and nurturing these authentic relationships. And I just find I find that sort of relationship to be maddening. I don't know how people can do it.
Yeah, and like for me, like I was in Toronto this past weekend, and I met up with a guy named Franco De Nicola, and he reminded me of this concept of like, what if it's not just me? Like, what if every single other person on this planet is a reflection of me? It's like, I am that person. I am, I see, you are a part of me. Each of you on this call is a part of me. And for me, how would I relate to you in that way? Differently than if it's like, I am me and you are separate, And so like, that was I've heard that before, but it just really hit home this past weekend during that session. So, and like, how would I treat people in that way? How would you relate to people seeing that you?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
In that and along those same lines, and kind of the same thought pattern behind what you say the relationship is, or the opportunity it gives you for growth, I find that once you do that self work, and you are aware of that, and that everyone out there is a reflection of you. You're putting yourself out there all the time. I find that the relationship is like the first person and the example you get to show the rest of the world this self-love or this self-awareness, right? And like, okay, if she's my reflection, then I need to treat her this way, give her this amount of honor, this respect, so on and so forth. Because you certainly can't. If you can't love yourself, you can't love the world. So if you can't treat that same person, your significant other, your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever it is, with that kind of love, then you can't talk about that anywhere else. That's your first example in my book. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I can't say that I love the rest of the world if I don't treat my human sister right here with that same kind of love and understanding and patience that I say that the world needs. So for me, it's, when Brandon and I say, like, step your game up, or we need to, fellas, we need to bring the level up, we need to bring the gentleman back. That's what I mean by that. Like, this is your first example of how you love yourself.
Yeah.
You have any final thoughts on that, Andrea?
Well, I was just thinking that I haven't been in a full-on committed relationship in a very long time. But I'm just reflecting on the last couple years of my life, and I have drawn in a crew of men, I think about 12 men, powerful, conscious, amazing guys, Rahul being one of them, that have come into my life. And even though I wasn't in a relationship with them or intimate with them, I took on that practice of really allowing myself to be in love with them. I mean, I can't even count on my hand how many times Rahul and I have met up, and some of these other men, where we come together and we have dinner, and if you were looking on the outside, you might think that we were in a relationship or we were, fully committed to each other, because we just step into this place of our hearts are open, and it feels like I'm in love with them. And I am deeply in love with them. And then also through that, of course, it brings up your stuff as well, a lot of it. And so just to bring another perspective, and I think I missed part of my computer cut out, so I missed part of the conversation, but Jeffrey must have been talking about the power of all relationships, that we have that opportunity to treat whoever is in front of us literally like the love of our life. Whoever is stranger, you don't even have to say anything to people. Just to be able to feel your heart open and look at them and see them, as you've mentioned, an aspect of yourself is really powerful. I did that this morning. I was on my run and I was kicking. Don't ask why. I was just doing these kicks. There was this guy coming down the street, and he was just totally staring at me. So my first thought was like, oh goodness, is he checking? All those thoughts, those fear thoughts that I've been really observing and working through. Were going through my head like, oh God, maybe I shouldn't have been kicking, all of that. So I told myself, as we were walking closer to each other, I literally felt my heart just crack open. I opened my chest, and I stared at him right back, and I just walked right into him. And what was so interesting, what he said to me, because he was just staring at me, he's smoking a cigarette, just like, whatever. And he goes, wow, you kick really high. And it was the sweetest comment where in my head I'm thinking he's like having all these dirty thoughts about me. But instead I chose to, again, just walk into it, open my heart to him. And it's amazing. And, I don't know if he was at some point having, who knows? It doesn't matter. in that space, what we created in that very moment was, it felt like surrender on both ends. So anyway, yeah, I think we have an opportunity to be that level of love that we would apply to a relationship in every area of our lives. And I ultimately think that's how we attract, you know, for me, I think that's what's going to attract the love of my life, that partner in my life, and because he's doing the same thing. And I want a man that's living at that level of openness, of love in all areas of his life, not just with me.
Isn't that what all of our greatest spiritual teachers talked about, though? I mean, throughout history, is that every single person is a part of you, and in order to really respect yourself, you have to respect everyone else. And if you really respect everyone else, you'll respect yourself and love deeply. And so, to your point, Jeffrey, about everybody being a reflection of you, I mean, if you know, the universe is a unified energetic system, and we are parts of that. We are individuals within that system, yet we are inextricably connected. And no matter how much we believe, the very belief that we are disconnected is what is causing all the war, strife, suffering in the world. And so in order to change that, it's not a matter of waging war on that. It's a matter of simply changing our personal beliefs. To your point, Andrea, about loving fully in each moment, whoever is in front of you, whoever is there, that's who you're meant to be with in that moment, and that's who you're meant to share that love with. And that's a powerful concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Phew! Jeffrey, why don't you share with our audience how they can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, jeffreyplatts.com. You can look me up on Facebook, Jeffrey Platts, Twitter, Jeffrey Platts, Instagram, Jeffrey Platts.
What was the Facebook one again?
What are some things that you've got going on, like that you're working on, or like just quickly, so that people can know how to get engaged?
Just basically, I'm doing a bunch of like events, you know, the Authentic Relating Game Nights and the circling events here in DC. We're bringing the Authentic Man program back to North Carolina in August. So the East Coast crew is going to be helping to facilitate and produce that event. AuthenticManProgram.com if you want to find out more about that. That's a big one. That's a huge one. I love
Great program.
Yeah. And you know, definitely I'll be doing some things probably with Vanessa in the next few months, some workshops or some programs. So yeah, that'll be fun.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jeffrey, for joining us in the Spiritual Activist today. You're doing amazing work out there. Keep it up. You know, it's that idea that, you know, we all have this different way of connecting with people, and you're doing a phenomenal job. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to catching you on the floor. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Broadcast is